He got over the second week, but there we was back in the mountains, and behind me, John, there was people singing hallelujah, hallelujah, and they didn't have flames, they have an amber on a stick. And they'd be, 75, 80, 100 people behind, walking, going to that next church, just following us to the next church. And we get there. I remember getting there up in the night one time.
Now, did you actually preach at the church after that?
Yeah, we went in. I remember going into one night, and it was so full that we couldn't get in. And they had hanging, I remember like this, they had like wine bottles hanging, liquor bottles hanging on ropes with wicks in them to light the place. And we had to walk down the seats.
That was really primitive stuff.
Yeah, had to walk down the seats to get up to the front and to preach to them. I went in one village one time, and John, there hadn't been a preacher there in 15 years. I got to the little village, and all they had was the book of John. They didn't have a whole Bible. And they had kids, but they had never got married because nobody married them. Hadn't had a preacher there. So we'd done the weddings first, lined them all up, done a big wedding. Then we had to dedicate their children, lined their kids up, and dedicated their children. Then they said, well, we want to get that baptized like we've heard about. So then we got them all lined up down the river and baptized them in the water.
You did that too?
Yeah, baptized them in the water. And we got back on them donkeys and rode out of there. And I remember I had an old red bandana wrapped around my head. It's what I had, and it had me a staff. And what I'd done, my clothes had got so soured, from the sweat and the water and baptizing people and stuff,
Yeah, you had nowhere to clean them.
There was nothing. Yes. So what I'd done, though, we had brought some clothes to give away, okay? And I got to rummaging through them, and I found a pair of red, white, and blue polyester pants. And they come about that far over I'll show you the picture sometime. They come about that far over my ankles, Uh-huh. They were red, white, and blue polyester. I was styling. But they was sure better than them other pants I had on. But I had no fear. I went places where
That's pretty amazing.
They had killed missionaries before I got there. And I went in one night back in the mountains, and a buddy of mine was standing back to back. And we got to this church, this denominational church, and they wouldn't let us in. But we had, it wasn't big enough for 30 people, but we had 150 people standing with us outside. So we stood back to back, and we knew they had killed people before we got there. And the first thing I had to interpret, tell them, I said, if you're gonna shoot me, you're gonna shoot me in the front. You're not gonna shoot me in the back. And we began to share with them about the love of Christ. But I wasn't afraid. There was no fear in me at that point. I didn't have any kind of a fear about that. But and think about support when I think about it. The places I was preaching at, we were talking about $10 an offering, $12. It was preaching little union halls.
So that's how you had to try to support yourself. Okay, and what little offering.
Little offering. And then they cut my water off 3 times one year. The town did, because I couldn't pay my bill. I had to keep,
Here?
Yeah, I had to keep one of those tools where I could come out,
church tool,
turn the water on. We'd all take a shower, and the kids would, and then we'd turn it back off. But we didn't. But my wife, man, she stood strong. We kept pushing.
How long you been married, John?
42 years.
42.
Yeah, and but I mean, man, I've been so blessed in my life. And I think about the things I've been through, and I think about just the different things that I wasn't afraid of. Now I got to sleep in that camper with a memory foam mattress, okay? Before I could sleep on a burlap sack, okay? But how things change in your life. There's a season for that stuff. About it.
I think after we finish with me, John, I think I ought to interview you. Well, I think that would be an experience too.
It was just a lot of stuff. I think about the things I've been through.
That's fantastic.
I've been
well, like you had to have a totally different mindset than mine.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was not organized, John. Okay, I mean, I spent
that's what I had to do.
Every other month, I would leave the country. Okay, I mean, I would leave and go to Mexico, and
did your wife go with you?
Oh no, I took her. I took her one time with me when I went to Jamaica one time, but I wouldn't take her with me. I took my kids with me a few times. I took my little Morgan with me. We were preaching in in North Carolina. I was preaching there for a couple of weeks. The little church had been closed for 20 years. And I went back into this little neighborhood and opened the church back up and said, I'm going to have revival here in this area. I was driving an old Ford van, 6-cylinder straight van. Anyway, and the bed let down in the back so we could sleep in it. And me and her and I were sleeping on the church pews at night. We would stay in the church. And we'd sleep on the church pew, and we'd have to clean up in that bathroom. Not no hot water, we'd clean up in there, and sometimes people fix us some food along, things like that.